I tend to be pretty good in crisis. My brain is happy to jump right into what needs to be done, to figure out the next steps, the list, to channel whatever emotions come up into action. And as you might imagine, this serves me well as a minister. When the world falls apart, which it seems to do on a regular basis these days, it is easy for me to go straight into professional mode. And that's certainly what I did on Wednesday morning. I woke up, I checked the news to see exactly what kind of world we would be facing. And then, if I'm being honest, there were maybe a few curse words. But then I took a deep breath and I wrote you all an email. You may have noticed the very early time server. I thought, okay, I know how to do this. I remind everyone to hydrate and breathe. That's first. I make space for us to be together. And then I find the hope in the midst of it all. And so I did just that. I sent the email, I got myself and my kids up and dressed, and then over breakfast, I realized that I had to tell them about how the election turned out. We had talked some about the candidates, not a ton. They're only 4 and 6 after all, so there's only so much they can comprehend. But it was enough that I wanted them to know before I sent them off into the world. So I told them who had won. I told them that some of the grown-ups they were around might be sad or scared today. I answered all of their questions. And then I thought to myself, okay, this is the part where I'm supposed to reassure them that they are safe. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't look my daughter in the eyes and tell her with any certainty that she would be safe. I couldn't promise anything about what this world would look like in the days and years to come. Much less that there would be safety in that world. Much less that there would be safety for anybody with a uterus. For our queer and trans bodies, for Black and brown bodies, for immigrant bodies, for any of us. And that realization broke through my professional crisis management mode, right? Any of you who have raised children or are currently raising children know that urge to keep those kiddos safe is so deep in us, right? And the fear when we lose that ability to ensure their safety runs just as deep. This is the heaviness that I have carried with me this week. The knowledge that our world, which was already too full of danger, will be even less safe going forward, especially for the most marginalized among us. That in that moment when I was supposed to do my job as a parent and reassure my children that they were safe, that it would be okay, that I couldn't do that. Each of us carries some heaviness in us today. Do you feel it? Some grief or fear or anger that is weighing us down. And so instead of just talking at you about it, I want to invite us into a few moments of holding the grief and fear and anger together. Can we do that? I've created a weeping well for us. It's going to get some of the tears out for us, so we don't have to do it. That sounds good, right? As we name the heaviness that we carry, I will drop stones into the water. With each stone, the water will flow over, weeping for our world. I begin with a stone for our children, for the safety that we cannot promise, and for the fear that reality brings. I invite you now to name the heaviness you carry today in a few words. If you're here in person, you can call it out one at a time. If you're online, you can type in the chat and I will repeat or read each one, each of our shared burdens, adding a stone to the well for each one. Planet.
Women.
Women.
Trans people.
Trans people.
Violence.
Those fleeing violence.
Mentally disabled.
The mentally disabled.
Unhoused.
The unhoused. The physically disabled.
Ukraine.
Ukraine. Immigrants.
Environment.
The environment.
Struggle with addiction.
People struggling with addiction. Democracy.
Palestine.
Palestine. The people of North Carolina in the mountains.
The elderly.
The elderly. Educational services for special needs kids.
Access to healthcare.
Access to healthcare.
Teenagers.
Teenagers.
Public schools.
Public schools.
Human decency.
Human decency.
Our trust in people.
Our trust in people.
Role models for children.
Role models for children. Understanding.
Whose families have been torn apart by partisan politics.
Those whose families have been torn apart by partisan politics.
Truth.
Truth.
Critical thinking.
Critical thinking. I have more. Science.
Journalism.
Journalists.
Freedom.
Freedom.
Immigrants.
Unions. Gaza.
Safety.
Safety. Healthcare.
Mutual respect.
Mutual respect. I heard immigrants.
Friendships.
Friendships. Those who choose to dissent.
Freedom of speech.
Freedom of speech. Public education.
Leaders who are exhausted with the fight.
Leaders who are exhausted with the fight. Understanding each other. Workers.
Financial difficulties.
Financial difficulties.
Social security.
Social security.
Healthcare.
Healthcare.
Ethics.
Ethics. Religious freedom.
Justice.
Justice.
Equity.
Equity.
World leadership.
Secular government.
Decency in human relations.
Decency in human relations. Birth control. Black women.
The people who voted against their own interests and are realizing it now.
The people who voted against their own interests and are realizing it now.
The arts.
The arts.
Capitalism.
Capitalism. Clean energy.
Our national
parks.
National parks, national forests.
Accurate history.
Accurate history. The arts. There one more right there. Research and discovery.
Renewed discrimination.
Renewed discrimination.
Vaccines.
Vaccines.
Gun violence.
Clean water. Gun violence.
Public health.
Public health.
4 years.
The next 4 years.
Safety.
Public safety.
Climate change.
Climate change.
COVID cautious people.
COVID cautious people.
Helping professions.
The helping professions.
Banned books.
Imported goods. We could keep going, right? Banned books. Let's get that one in there. I'm gonna add this one last giant stone for everything else that we hold in our hearts. There is so much we carry. I want to invite you to sing with me if you know this one. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. It's the song of longing. It's an old African American spiritual and speaks to the moments when the love is not visible, but you know it must be there somewhere. Let's sing it one more time. There is more love somewhere. There is more love somewhere. I'm gonna keep on till I find it. There is more love somewhere. So my friend told me a story this week about her cousins. When they were kids, they used to watch the movie The Sound of Music. How many people know that? Great. It was a version of the movie that they had recorded off of TV. And with all the extra commercial breaks, the movie was quite long. And the recording ended before the end of the actual movie. In fact, their version ended just after Rolf betrays the Von Trapp family to the Nazis. Do you remember that part?
Yes.
The Von Trapps are hiding in the Abbey, and when the Nazis come to find them, Rolf, who had been in love with Liesel Von Trapp before he joined the Nazis, is the one who finds them and blows the whistle to alert the rest of the troop that they've been found. Now imagine if at that moment the movie had just ended. That was how these cousins thought it was. They didn't know that there was any more to the story past Rolf's betrayal, past the apparent triumph of fascism, right? When even this young soldier who we thought might be good betrays the ones he loves. But we know, at least any of you who have seen the movie, that that's not the real end of the story, right? The soldier's car stalls, thanks to the clever nuns who had removed some key engine parts. And Maria knows the way over the mountains and leads the family to safety. That triumph of fascism was not, in fact, the end of the Von Trapp story. They lived on. They came all the way to Vermont, right? And let me tell you this. The triumph of fascism is not the end of our story either, right? It may feel like it in this moment. It may have felt like it on Wednesday morning, but this is not the end. Rebecca Solnit wrote this week, they want you to feel powerless and to surrender and to let them trample everything, and you are not going to let them. You are not giving up, and neither am I, she says. The fact that we cannot save everything does not mean that we cannot save anything. And everything that we can save is worth saving. You may need to grieve or scream or take time off, but you have a role no matter what. And right now, good friends and good principles are worth gathering in. Remember what you love, she says. Remember what loves you. Remember in this tide of hate what love is. The pain that you feel is because of what you love. Now, it can feel like a tall order to remember what love is in moments like this one. And yet, we also know that in these moments, it is only love that can save us. This week, hatred, violence, and plain old meanness won the election. But that doesn't mean that we have to let those things win our hearts as well. In fact, to survive these next 4 years, we need the opposite of that. Our work in this moment is the same as it always has been. As Unitarian Universalists, we are here to love the hell out of the world, right? To love fiercely and fully, to love as if it matters, as if our world depends on it. Now, I want to be really clear that when I say love, I'm not talking about kindness or niceness. When we get into these moments in our country where the rhetoric is really hateful and mean, there's a lot of talk out there about kindness. There's a lot of calls to unity. And I don't think in this moment that kindness or unity is enough. There is too much at stake. In fact, I fear that such urges to come together will simply enable further the fascism that lies at our doorstep.
Yes.
Kindness and unity too often gloss over real harm, too often skip over accountability. We can't do that. Love, on the other hand, demands accountability. Love holds us all accountable. So instead of building false bridges, of acting nice even as we feel nauseous, let's practice loving instead. Can we do that? Even if we don't know what the fruits of our love will be, because we cannot know. We cannot know if it'll make any difference at all. let us practice loving anyway. There is so much we don't know about what is to come. We don't know how far the hatred and violence will go. We don't know how many lives will be lost. We don't know the full extent of what love will demand of us. But we do know some things, right? We know that this isn't the end of our story. We know that we are not alone. We know that we have never needed each other more than right now. We know that we will fight for each other, right? And we know that in the midst of it all, we've got literally the best people by our side, right? I want you to look around for a moment, either in the room or on your screen, and know these are your people. You see them? These are the ones who will hold you as you weep and fight for you when your rights are threatened. These are the ones who will be by your side as we practice loving anyways. Hope has been hard to come by this week, but I have felt it the most when I think of all of you. And so in the midst of the grief and the fear, in the midst of all this heaviness that we hold, in the midst of our anger and pain, we kindle one small light of hope. We know that we will go on. May it be so.